Okay. I have 5:31. And I'd like to convene this meeting of the Board of Directors for the San Lorenzo Valley Water District for June 26, 2025. I don't see Leah, so I will ask you, Jen.
Yes,
Take
no
the roll.
problem. All right, President Smalley,
Here.
Vice President Lang,
Here.
Director Foltz,
Here.
and Director Lage.
He's not online.
Okay.
But he is going to be attending remotely.
Yes, he is going to be attending. He's just having some.
Oh, there he is.
There he is. He's showing up as Scott. Cool. All right. Hi, Brian. We were just taking roll.
You're muted.
Sounds great. Glad to be here. Thanks.
You can
Okay.
change his name if you want.
So Brian Lage is here. We have everyone.
Okay. All right. Do we have any changes to the closed session agenda? Any oral communications from members of the public? I don't see anything yet. Okay, so nobody online, nobody here. Then I'd like to go ahead and adjourn to the closed session promptly. So do you have the go-to meeting set up
Yes.
for us so that we can go into the
I just got to go and get a sign.
phone of silence room?
Okay, CTV, we'll be back in an hour.
I got you.
Screen now.
Good.
It was ready to
Okay.
talk.
I'm colorblind. Thank you.
Sorry.
I'd like to reconvene this meeting of the San Lorenzo Valley Water District for June 26, 2025. Leah, would you take roll, please?
President Smalley,
Here.
Vice President Lane,
Here.
Director Foltz,
Here.
and Director Lage.
Here.
Okay. All right. Before we go into the regular portions of the meeting agenda, I do want to make a comment. The reason for the special meeting tonight is we did not expect to be able to have a quorum in person for June 3rd. We need to appoint a new board member by no later than the 12th of July in order to meet county requirements. So we're going to do that this evening and proceed then. So that's the reason we're having a special meeting this evening. In addition to that, we have several other items on the agenda.
But just point of order, just to indicate that no reportable action out of the closed session.
Yes.
It will be continued after the regular board meeting this evening.
Right. We did not adjourn from the closed session yet. Any changes to the agenda, staff?
None for me.
Okay. Oral communications. This portion of the agenda is for oral communications from members of the public for any items within the jurisdiction of the district that are not on the agenda this evening. So does anybody from the public wish to address the board? Seeing none and none online, we will then proceed. New business. We have no unfinished business to discuss. New business. Notice of vacancy. Jen, are you presenting this one?
Present it.
Okay. All right.
All right, so I'm just gonna read from the memo, but it's recommended that the board of directors review the applications received by the district, decide whether to appoint by a motion of the board, one of the applicants to fill the remainder of the term of office for the board seat that was left vacant by the resignation of Jeff Hill. There is an outline here of how the interview can be conducted, but as we know, the president of the board may exercise discretion as to how to conduct these interview process and discussion in a fair and orderly manner. So I will leave it to you, Mr. Board President, to take it away.
Okay. Given the recommended process below that we see of the six items, I did want to attempt to vary from one of them, and that's on point 3, which states interview applicants ensuring that each one is asked the same prepared question. We have not submitted any prepared questions to the candidates, and I find it somewhat restrictive in interviews if I'm asking individuals the same thing that don't really apply to the next individual. So if the board concurs with that, I would like to be able to ask questions from the board as we see appropriate.
So just a point of order thing, the Zoom link is not working. I've got an email in the inbox from a public member and I couldn't get on it either. It says that another meeting is in progress.
I had the same experience as well. I had to go to a different link for it. The one on the agenda wasn't working.
Yeah.
They told us that was the same one, so, okay. That's CTV then,
Oh, okay, Barbara, you just used one from an old one?
yeah.
I used one from the invite in the email that I got. Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
No. I confirmed that, yeah.
Okay, that's fine. I'll find something that works and send it out.
Okay.
But as far as to your question, the same question?
The procedures that are in front of us were interview applicants ensuring that each one is asked the same question, which I find restrictive. I want to have the board be able to ask a bit more, either freeform or informative of the individuals based on the individual's background. Simply that. So I don't see any objections to that. I can see Brian's face. I don't see Brian objecting to that either. So let's proceed then. So we have 2 candidates this evening that are currently participating with the district on committees. Cheryl Adams is on the admin committee and Bob Russ is on the budget finance committee. So why don't we start with Cheryl and allow you to introduce yourself to the board and the public.
Good evening, I'm Cheryl Adams and I am on the administration committee and enjoying my work there. Have been on that committee since January. Just a little bit of background on me. I've been here about 3 years. I came here in March of 2022. I've always loved this Santa Cruz area. My children and I used to always take vacations here. We'd stay in Aptos or Santa Cruz or sometimes up here in the mountains. I love it up here. At any rate, so it's always had a special place in my heart. And when I saw you guys going through the CZU fire, it was devastating for me watching it from afar. And little did I know that a year later to the day, I'd be having my own devastating fire up at my house in Grizzly Flats. Lost my home, lost 2/3 of my community, and watched my little water district struggle with trying to figure out how to reconstruct all the infrastructure and get their finances back on track because they lost 2/3 of their customers. So, small water companies like this, water districts that are, publicly owned are near and dear to my heart. Community service is near and dear to my heart. I spent my entire career in public service. So I'm very community minded. I'm also a volunteer at the local radio station, ABCZ, which we also have a meeting today. So as soon as we're finished here, I'm going to hightail it to Felton and see if I can catch the rest of that meeting. But at any rate, I love this community and I love this area. And when I see something that needs support, like a small radio station or this water district that is a real gem, we don't have we aren't being charged for, a water district that is trying to make a profit, trying to make profits and is corporate thing. So I just think those kinds of things need support, need our support, need our love, need our, and for me, dive in and give them some help. So that's kind of where I'm at. And I don't have environmental or I don't have environmental, knowledge. I don't have the knowledge of engineering or anything like that, but I do bring to the table a lot of other stuff. I bring, wealth of knowledge about government and how it works and how to work with the community and how to collaborate with other entities, because we all have to work with each other here in the community. And administrative background. I ran a whole section and did all kinds of you've seen my application, so I don't need to reiterate, but you can see that I've got a wealth of that kind of experience to bring to the table, which is maybe something you need. I think I can contribute.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Cheryl. So I'd like to open it up to the board for questions. And Brian, I'd like to start with you. Being remote, we'll give you the first chance with Cheryl.
Thanks so much, Mark. And Cheryl, thank you so much for stepping up, joining the committee, and wanting to serve our community in this way. It is a wonderful act of service. The question that I have has to do with the unique nature of the water district that we have, which is that it's a government agency with a product that is sold to customers. And there aren't very many agencies that have their primary purpose being delivering a product. And because of that, we have unique aspects of the operations that are government related, and unique aspects that are about efficient delivery of a product to a customer. I wonder if you might speak a little bit about your experience, and just so that some of the things on my mind are state grant funding, union negotiations, and then efficiency. And I wonder if you might speak to those three topics.
Sure. Well, my experience with government was providing services. So we actually were direct service provider agency. And so it was important that we had a good quality product that was efficiently run and that actually got outcomes. We had outcome measurements that we were as a line staff as well as a department were expected to adhere to. And so I'm used to that kind of thing. I'm used to service delivery. I'm used to making sure that it's cost efficient, making sure that we would stick to a budget, and And so it's not exactly like the water district, but there's some similarities there that I think I can bridge the gap with. So, you know, yes, it is unique. It is unique to have, we were actually unique as a department of the state of California that we actually provided direct services. So it's very important that we work with the public, but we also are accountable to the public as well as to whatever our funding sources are. And so, yeah, I mean, I was directly involved in not writing grant applications, but we did have grant programs that we did, and what I did was work collaboratively with local school districts, local counties, and we would collaborate to bring down some federal funds to fund programs for them. The department was underfunded with our match funds. It's a federal program, but there was a required state match. You guys are probably very familiar with that. And so we found ourselves in a budget crunch one time, and the state didn't give us enough match to draw down our full federal funds. And so somebody was very smart and knew the federal regulations and knew that we could get that match from non-federal sources, that it had to be another government entity. So we started into these collaborative programs with local entities and recovered our share of the federal funds through that means. So I'm used to being maybe thinking outside the box to help the program succeed and to help deliver those services that we're supposed to be doing. It's all about that. Number one, right down the line, are we delivering those services? And is it being done timely? And is it being done accurately? And are we meeting our goal objectives? So yeah, I'm used to contracting. I'm used to budgeting. I'm used to understanding federal, state, and local laws and regulations, making sure that we adhere to those as well. And reviewing those programs for that sort of thing, for their compliance with the rules and regulations, and for their getting the outcomes that would then lend us to have statewide around. So did I get it all, Director Largay?
Yeah, thanks so much for
Okay.
that. That's a wealth of very practical experience.
Okay.
I'll allow the conversation to pass on to my next colleague. Thanks so much, Cheryl. Really
Okay.
appreciate it.
All right. Bob?
Yeah, echoing what Brian said, thank you for stepping up. And it's really great to see that both candidates came from committees, because the intention of increasing the number of people in committees was actually to expand the pool from which we could draw on. So thank you for doing well. It worked this time. You know, from your background, I can tell that you do a fair amount of research into things. Based on everything that you've experienced on the administration committee and the community, what would you say are the top 3 challenges that our water district is facing at this time?
Well, continuing to improve and just, you know, recover from the fire and the infrastructure issues that resulted from that. That was just so huge. You're still working on getting all of that taken care of. That would be one. Number 2, making sure that the staffing levels are kept. You know, we don't have vacancies for too long, and I do know that has been an issue. So, you know, how do we make sure that we continue to keep those positions filled, and perhaps having some sort of a bench within the district where we're trying to help other people gain the skills to fill in those positions rather than going outside the district. And what else? 3 things that you need to work on. You know, I give this district a lot of slack because you've just come through the fire and come out like a phoenix, you're still here and you're still functioning, and you've got so many people here that work their tails off for the district. And there's a lot of people who are dedicated to making sure that this district continues to provide safe, clean, cost-effective water to its constituents. So the only other thing I can think of is communicating how good you are, what great things you are doing to the greater public. I would love to see more people understand what you guys do, because it takes a lot to deliver water that you can just turn on in your tap and have it be clean. I mean, we've got honestly the best water in the area. So you guys are doing a great job. I would love more people to know about it.
Great, thank you
Okay.
for that.
Sure.
Thanks. Alina?
Yeah, well, I just want to thank you so much for your work, and we've been working together on the admin committee together, and you've been a great help out over there, and just like bringing your knowledge and expertise to that. As you know, we've worked through the org chart, and we really wanted to dig into our strategic and master plans, and I'm just really thankful that you're asking those questions and bringing that forward. So I think a big question for me is, a lot of people that get into this and they have the background, they have the knowledge, which I see that you do, but do you have the time? And so this is a bigger commitment than I think a lot of people really understand. Like, here we are on a special meeting and we're getting called in tonight kind of on a short notice, and so things like this happen and come up, and do you have the time to actually, dedicate yourself to the district and to be able to attend all these board meetings and everything outside of the board meetings? Because people see this, you're like, oh, we just go to the board meeting, and then it's over. But it's not. There's, it could be 20 plus hours of work sometimes of what's going on. So what's kind of your availability looking like?
I do, and I understand that this would be a new workload for me, but I'm retired, so I don't have a job during the day. My other commitment is the radio station, and most of the stuff that I do there is pretty regimented. It's all scheduled. The meetings are scheduled, my shows are scheduled. There's things that pop up every once in a while. So I think I can juggle the two, honestly, pretty easily. When it comes to things like this, you see I'm juggling it now. Trying to split the baby, which is me at this point, but I realize it'll be a greater workload for me, and I think I can handle it, and I think I can handle both. The volunteer with the radio station and this as well.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Well, one of my questions is similar to that, with 2 board meetings a month and the likelihood of 2 committees meeting once a month. But it sounds like you're already aware of those commitments that a board member is making.
Well, and not only that, not just sitting in meetings, but also all the prep work that takes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And
So,
Alina has alluded to that, all of the prep work. Okay. The question that I have is then on financial experience. Can you describe to us what you have in that? In particular, any thing on debt financing and cost controls? Debt financing is one aspect that we're going to be talking about later this evening.
I saw the materials.
So can you address that, your financial experience?
Okay, now my financial experience was working with our budgets and finance people. So I'm aware of all that stuff going on, but I wasn't responsible for it. I was responsible for my own budget, which was a piece of that bigger budget, and keeping track of that and making sure that that was spent. And not only was I responsible for tracking the outflow, but also the income, because we were not only bringing in money to draw down the federal funds, but then we were dispersing that through contracts. So I have that level, which is a little more granular, I think, than what you're talking about. So this would be a learning curve for me.
Mhm.
I have some background in this, but again, I'm not an accountant. And I come from the social services field, so I'm not scared of numbers, but I had a statistics class, I passed it, put it that way. So I can do some math. But my expertise on that procurement stuff would be where, we do collaboration with other agencies and where we're looking at grant opportunities and things like that. I might be able to help with those kinds of things.
Okay. All right. Okay, thank you. Before we solicit public comments, communications, I'd like to transition to our other candidate and have Mr. Russ provide responses, and then as a collective, we can go out to the public for any comments on both individuals. So, Bob, I'll ask you to do the same thing. Introduce yourself to the board, to the public.
All right, thank you, Mark. My name is Bob Russ. We want to thank each of the board members for your time and service as you're interviewing both Cheryl and me for the time commitment involved. I appreciate what you've already put into it, as well as staff, Leigh and Jen and Scott and all the other folks here. I've been here for 5.5 years, and we moved from the other side of the hills. And to get closer to our two sons, we have one son living in Hoganek and one in Watsonville. And we have been so happy to make that change. And of course, we got, baptized literally by the fire, because shortly after we moved here, COVID hit, and of course, the CZU fire. And so I sort of saw the writing on the wall after that. Because of the CZU fire, when I came back energized to try to figure out ways to harden property. And then it ended up putting between fish pond and above ground pool and water tank, put in 35,000 gallons of water storage, 11 fire hydrants on the property, 3 2 horsepower pumps, with being able to go off the grid, solar battery in the garage, and natural gas generator with Generac, all there. So I'm very comfortable with that kind of process. And then slowly have gotten involved. Similar to Cheryl, I've also joined the committee just in January, in the finance committee. So that's been really interesting for me, and kind of made me think about, am I open to this position? Basic background, I'm a licensed mechanical engineer here in the state of California, but I also have a business background. I've started several companies. I've been a CEO a couple times over and CFO several times. So I'm very comfortable with not public finance, but certainly enterprise finance, private finance. I've raised venture capital money, negotiated, accounts receivable lines or different other lines of credit with banks, that kind of thing. And so I'm comfortable in that kind of world. I too am at this point 90% retired, so I do take this my throwing my own hat into take that very seriously. And one of the things I was actually quite happy about is that I am not making a 4-year commitment. That is basically a commitment to step in Jeff's place and see how it works, see how the chemistry is, see what I can contribute, and then go from there and see if I want to, if it makes sense for me to stay involved. Because of my being involved in business for so long, my general process of how to get things done is discussion. I like building up consensus. I like win-win situations. And certainly in this kind of a situation, there's a lot of stakeholders, right? From our customers to other local entities, and then we've got some very serious challenges facing us over the next few years. So the more discussion and the more consensus we can do, I think, the better. So anyway, thank you for the time.
Okay, all right. Then we'll go to questions from board members. Alina, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I touched on it a little bit, and well, you answered my other question, so I guess I don't have to ask one, but you touched on this a little bit. But what really kind of motivates you to be a part of the board, and have you been a part of a board before of any sort?
I've not been a part of a nonprofit or a public board, I guess. I've been on a number of boards of directors for companies, and I'm in. It had actually helped found and helped get started a nonprofit farm where one of my sons lives. I might have heard of Common Roots Farm, just near Poganet off of Golf Club Drive in San Francisco, off of Highway 9. And that got sort of up and running about 4 or 5 years ago. But I'm not on its board, and I've really sort of stepped away. It's completely taken on a life of its own, which is gratifying. So I've been on 4 private boards. I've been chair of several boards and then board member of others. So I'm familiar with the process and agendas stuff. I've never had to worry about the Brown Act, so that's a new overlay on the process. But I'm perfectly comfortable with it, and I understand its purpose. So I hope that answers the question, Amanda.
Okay, Bob.
Yeah, thank you for serving on the committees as well. Based on your admittedly brief tenure on the budget committee, how would you assess the district's finances at this point, relative to operating capital expenses and that sort of thing?
Well, that is certainly because that is what I'm familiar with. And I'm certainly not hugely familiar with it, but for the last several months. The district has got some big challenges, and one of the things that really kind of hit me was, well, I hadn't appreciated just how long it takes to get money back from FEMA. And that's, I forget the exact numbers, but I think it's like on the order of 15 million. And so trying to float all of the capital, the construction projects that need to be completed, and do that with borrowed debt, et cetera, is expensive, and timing can be very critical. And one of the concerns I had even in a budget committee a couple months ago was, if we're talking about maybe going out to the public markets for 19 million in bonds to see us through for the next couple of years and hopefully finish off most of the construction projects. I was just very concerned that if there's a way to fine tune timing so that we're not borrowing money and then just sitting on it, that because that's going to be a couple million a year. It's just a crazy number, and fine tune that so that hopefully, and I don't know if it's possible to stage it or get 2 pieces or whatever, but sort of really sit down from an engineering and construction, outside contractor bidding perspective on how do you actually face all of these things, and I don't know if there's a master Gantt chart for the organization that really has all of these things phased in and all of the from a critical path perspective, what needs to be done first for this to happen, and that, and how many interdependencies are there amongst these pieces. I'm not familiar at all with what the district has on its plate. But between the just the monies that are needed and and then hopefully getting, the FEMA money to backfill that. I guess in a year, 2, 3 years, I'm not really sure about the timing. That strikes me as being very important. Replacing the infrastructure, as Cheryl had pointed out, we have to do that. There's a lot to do. And, one of course, the debates in the budget committee is, well, our assets, do we have 150 million in assets or arguably 500 million, depending on how you want to value it? And so what is a proper reserve account set up for it? What do we need to, and is it depreciation or do some of these assets have much longer lives, or obviously some equipment has much shorter lives? So I don't know how much analysis has been done on those points. And it's a lot of work to get into the weeds to really figure that out, or at least come up with some numbers. So the challenges are cash flow, making sure that we can complete the construction projects in a timely way that coincides with the money coming in, so that we don't have a year sitting on cash and earning a little interest, but getting penalized for sitting on it. Other bad effects. So those would be my biggest concerns. So I was very, very happy to hear that the district has hired a general manager, and I can hardly wait for the district to bring in a director of finance. I mean, it's more than a full-time job to really handle all these things. So I don't know where it is, but I certainly want to put my 2 cents in on that. Very important. And the only other thing I would throw in, it's not really I suppose it's a cliche, but speaking of district assets, perhaps the biggest district asset are people, and so I know very little about morale, organizational development issues within the staff, and just sort of overall harmony. And I hope that that's part of that's certainly part of just keeping an organization moving forward, keeping everyone positive, and keeping the objectives in mind, so that the staff and everybody are headed in the same direction. So I hope that
Okay.
helps.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you very much. Okay. Brian?
Thanks, Mark. And Bob, I just want to say how much I've appreciated working with you on the Budget and Finance Committee. Your experience and insight just in the several months that you've been contributing in that way has been invaluable. And it's very nice that you've put your hat in the ring. Thank you so much for being willing to consider serving in this way. I'll share the same question with you that I did with Cheryl, and just to reframe or reiterate, the district is this public agency subject to the government structures and rules and whatnot, as you've alluded to, that also delivers this fee-based product to customers. And I wonder if you might speak to your experience insofar as you've had exposure, acknowledging your experience is mainly private sector, but to things like grant funding, union contracts, and then the private sector probably speaks well to this, the efficient delivery of goods and services to customers. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Let's see. I don't have any direct experience in the public sector, but as part of my years of experience with building companies, some failing, some succeeding, I did write dozens of grants. So I'm comfortable, and those are obviously grants where we're trying to get DOE grants or DARPA grants or things like that. So it's a little different perhaps, but I think maybe the overall process is probably similar. regarding, direct public, public, sector experience, I really don't have any. I think that the private, sector experience that I have will still, serve a lot of purposes here, so, I hope that. And I think I've forgotten one of your questions, Brian, so I apologize.
Efficient delivery of products and services.
Okay, well, being in the private sector, if you're not efficiently delivering products and services, you don't last very long. I've been in both product and service businesses, from smart grid companies to building up a product development consulting company, and eventually sold it with 250 employees, where we had to not only deliver product designs to our customers, but and so yeah, I've had a lot of products where you have to deal with all the things that you have to deal with: inventory, customer returns, RMAs, just the whole 9 yards. And I'm sure that there's a lot of overlap with those processes here at the district. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Bob. So you've told us a lot about your finance experience. The district also has other aspects of the district. I see engineering in your background. What's your experience or knowledge of the district's engineering, or how do you see engineering playing into what we're doing as a?
Well, as a board member, you have a fiduciary responsibility for all aspects of the district. So it's HR, it's environmental, it's engineering, budget, it's the whole enchilada. And I do feel that I've got a very strong, as a mechanical engineer, my emphasis was in fluids and heat transfer. And so I spent my early years, I was at Lawrence Livermore Labs, working on, believe it or not, fluid flow, but it was with liquid helium, cooling down a giant magnetic fusion device. So I'm very comfortable with engineering, and very comfortable designing things, looking at designs, and also making sure that designs are tested, that things are on budget, that you achieve milestones. So from an engineering perspective, that was actually a major driver in my career, was the combination of both engineering, technology, and the business side, creative side, of how to bring something to market. And so that was a driver for from day one. So certainly the engineering side, I wouldn't want to overplay it, but I would love to have conversations and get involved on the engineering side, just sort of see what's there. That would be great. As a CEO, I've done a lot of recruiting, hired headhunters, interviewed hundreds of people. So building a team, finding the right team members is critical. And so that's certainly a very important board function as well. I'm less familiar with the HR side, and laws, and they certainly changed the law since I was involved in companies directly years ago. But I would listen and do my best.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So I'd like to solicit any comments from the general public on what they've heard from our two candidates this evening. Do we have anybody here in the room, public, that wants to offer a comment? Seeing none right now, is there anybody online that wishes to? Let me pause for a minute. I see one online. I'll transition back to you in just a minute. Online, I see Jim Mosier.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can now, yes.
Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get onto the meeting until after Cheryl had spoken. I did get to hear Bob, but I did look at both resumes and I've met both. And I just want to say that we're very fortunate to have these two folks willing to serve on the board. I think you just can't go wrong. They both bring a lot of expertise and commitment to the district. And so I just want to express my appreciation to both of them for their willingness to throw their hats in the ring. Thank you.
Okay.
All I want to do is go on the record to say that the link did not work to connect in. It was for July 3rd because it was a recurring meeting, not a special meeting. So I didn't hear Cheryl either, but I just want to let you know that for tonight's meeting, there's a lot of important information, both in electing a new board member, debt and consolidation, and not having a link that works is detrimental to the community being involved.
Okay.
Yeah, if you
Thank
saw
you.
some scrambling going on over here, we were trying to get the link out
Yeah,
to.
CTV told me it was gonna be the same link as usual. I asked them that specifically. So yeah, we've updated the link on the website.
Okay. All right. Seeing no further members of the public wishing to offer comments on our candidates, any further comment from board members prior to making a motion? Bob?
Other than to say, thank you both for throwing your hat into the ring, for applying. Regardless of what happens tonight, hopefully your participation will continue. And, there's elections every 2 years, plus, we have had a number of appointments over the years as well. So this isn't necessarily the only bite of the apple, I guess, on that. So thank you again for throwing your hat in the ring.
Yeah, I just thank you both so much for stepping up and how you're serving on the committees right now, and that you applied for this. Not you're not paid well at all to do these things, so I just really appreciate you guys. Basically willing to volunteer to do this. And I'm sorry that the link didn't go through. I think that some of you had some people that wanted to say some stuff on your behalf, and we were trying to get it out as quick as possible. I still don't see some of the people that requested it on, so I do apologize for that. Hopefully maybe they'll get in here in a little bit, but maybe not. But thank you again, both.
Okay. All right. Brian, anything further?
I'll just reiterate that it really warms my heart, Bob and Cheryl, that each of you would step forward in this way, and the caliber of people in our community is amazing to me. But both of you just have exemplary qualifications, and I honestly wish we had 2 seats open at this time. So thank you very much for stepping forward.
Okay. All right. Then a motion?
Yes.
On this? Okay.
Yeah, I move that the board appoint Bob Russ to fill the remainder of the term of office for the board seat left vacant by the resignation of Director Jeff Hill.
Okay. I will second that. So, please.
Okay. President Smalley,
Yes.
Vice President Lane,
Abstain.
and Director Legay.
I think that I'd like to make a comment about this the motion, and I guess my initial reaction to the review of Cheryl and Bob's presentation and applications is that I think that I'm a little concerned about diverse representation on the board. And with all respect to Mark Smalley, your experience, and Bob Foltz, your experience, with the addition of Bob, we will now have 3 retirees or current or phasing outs. I'm not sure how you describe your career arcs, but people with considerable business expertise with an engineering focus, and no one on the board with government experience, despite being a government agency. And I think that finding a good solution to problems often involves triangulation. And triangulation means looking at things from different perspectives. And I don't have government experience. I worked for an agency
Point of order, please.
15 years ago.
Point of order. We really are at a vote at this point. If Brian, you wish to vote no or abstain, then we can come back and revisit this and have a discussion.
I'm not familiar with that procedural matter. If the president would like me to stop talking, I'm happy to.
We're taking a vote.
Barbara, I'll defer to you. I think I agree with Bob, but on this.
Well, yeah, discussion is had. I mean, if you want further discussion and hold the vote, then you could request that, or like Director Fultz indicated, abstain or vote no. So it's kind of the discussion period is supposed to be the discussion period, and then vote. So
Right, and we.
I guess I was under the impression that after a motion was made, it was common for there to be discussion. What we had was a motion and then a vote.
Point of order. We had the president call for a vote.
Yes.
That is where we are right now. So if you don't like that, vote no or abstain, and it can come back for discussion.
I guess I'm still confused about there being a motion and no discussion of the motion. That's inconsistent with past practice. But so I guess I'll abstain so that we can go back to having discussion about this.
But we have a motion. It's been seconded. Then
if you have two abstains, then the motion does not pass.
Yeah, so he abstained.
The motion fails for lack of majority vote.
Then I do want to see if we can get to some conclusion. So let's discuss further. I do want to comment to what Brian is saying. And yes, I also appreciate diversity, but one thing that I'm weighing significantly is finance experience, which I think the district should be seeking, whether it's from man or a woman. And I find Bob's discussions tonight of what he was describing more compelling to me as an individual. So I appreciate Cheryl's background, but I was torn between both applications, but what I'm hearing from Bob based on his background. So other board members, we're back to discussion. Bob?
I know it's hard for people to understand this at times because we do have a lot of issues that come to us from a very diverse set of topics. But at the end of the day, the number one job of a board member are the numbers. Because without a focus on the numbers, we don't get infrastructure, we don't get staff, we don't get a happy public that doesn't see their rates increase unnecessarily. So I agree with Mark. I thought that while both candidates bring something to the board, where we are right now, facing a financing situation, facing the fact that our current capital budget is not funded, even with the 19 million. The background that Bob has in this area is really spoke to me as well. And that's why I would support him.
Okay. Alina, further comment?
Yeah, I mean, I think they both have, budgeting and financial experience. Cheryl's is a little different than what Bob's is, but I think what Cheryl brings to the table and what we really need is a strong admin. We have a lot of things going on right now with labor negotiations. We have our org chart that's going on. We have our strategic and master plans that are out of date. And, we just passed our budget, and that's not going to be going on again until the next election cycle. And we're going to have some more open seats then. And I think that would be a great place for Bob to be. But right now, what we're, trying to do is we're bringing in a new general manager and, trying to get everything administratively, set back up and onto par. And so I feel that Cheryl really brings that expertise, specifically that she has worked in government and state government. And I think that her perspective on that is invaluable. I've been serving with her on the admin committee, and she's brought up things that I haven't even thought of. And so it's been really helpful to have her there in those discussions. And so I would really like to see Cheryl appointed.
Okay. Brian, any further reflection?
I'll just be clear. While I appreciate that there may be unique perspectives Cheryl would bring because of her gender, I'm principally interested in the diversity from her background, from her government service. I think that working in an agency is substantially distinct from working in the private sector, and has a whole host of very specific issues related to that. I will also say that Bob's characterization of the need and value to highly structured business plans, if we had Gantt charts for our full capital rollout, I would be ecstatic. And the prospect of bringing that expertise onto the team to work towards that direction and further professionalize the delivery of capital goods with robust financing is very appealing to me. So I think that this is an important conversation to be had, and that's why I did not vote, because I think it's important to have discussion about what the district needs and what the candidates can bring to it.
Okay. All right. Bob, further?
Well, I mean, my understanding is, Brian and Elena, you both have a substantial amount of work experience within a government context. It's not like we're at a loss for that kind of background. Brian, I know you work on a lot of grants, or at least it seems like you do from your description of what you do. And when grants come up, I know that Alina has worked in grants. I don't see that we're I don't see that we're bereft of experience working in a government context. What I do see, particularly with a new general manager coming on board, is someone with deep experience in actually operating companies and being able to provide that kind of support to the new general manager that Bob Russ has, clearly from his business experience. That is, we're going to need to have a very strong, in my opinion, finance operations support for the general manager coming in. And that's where, again, I think that he speaks very loudly and clearly to me that he's got a ton of experience in this area that we really could use.
Then I'll make the motion again to nominate Bob Russ to the position of director to fill the seat vacated by Jeff Hill.
We can have two motions on the table. I believe so. Because I would also like to move.
I will second that. Well, I mean, again, President.
We have to vote on one first.
Yeah.
We can't.
Yeah.
Go down two paths at the same time.
So I will second Mark's motion.
Okay.
All right, so the final vote would be President Smalley,
Yes.
Vice President Lane,
Abstain?
Director Fultz
Yes.
and Director Larding.
Yes.
Okay,
Motion
motion
passes.
passes. Jen, would you, please administer the,
Shall we take a brief recess while we do this?
that, yes, I'd like to take a 5-minute recess while, Jen, our acting GM, administers the oath of office for, Brian, or for Bob Russ, and we will reconvene in 5. So, please.
So.
To listen. You listen. All right, thank you. I have a.
Yeah. All right, thanks.
Audio check.
You're working. We're muted.
Okay.
We're muted.
We're muted.
We're muted. There we go.
Oh, okay.
You have to say it all again.
Heather?
Yes.
You're presenting.
I am presenting.
I introduced the item, but you didn't hear us.
I did not.
Okay, so we're talking about the proposed debt financing.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, board members. I'm Heather Ipoletti. I'm a senior advisor with RGS, and I serve as finance for the district. Tonight's action is about debt financing. In early 2024, some debt financing options were presented to the board. It was not the right time. And now with the adoption of the biennial budget on June 5th, I am representing that topic with the same financing team. Before you is Ken Deeker with municipal advisor with Del Rio Advisors. David Fama with Jones Hall. He's bond counsel and disclosure counsel. And then Nikki Tallman is there, underwriter with Oppenheimer and Company. And they have a full presentation to provide to you. And with that very brief introduction, I'm going to turn it over to them for their presentation. Thank you.
Good evening. If I could get can you guys hear me okay?
We can, yes.
Presentation comes up here. I think this is the one. No? No. The other one. Nope. What's interesting about? No. Let me go back to here.
Third time's a charm.
Okay.
But no pressure.
Right. I got them both sent me just a minute ago, so I mean, and they look the same. So Jen, where's the one you sent? I'm sorry. I think it's a water revenue. Should it?
Certificate of
Yeah.
participation.
Okay. Yeah. Here. That's the one. You go. Okay, thank you. My name is Ken Deeker with Del Rio Advisors. I'm a municipal advisor. I have Nikki Tallman here with me as well tonight, so we'll be presenting this item. We're basically going to talk about the issuance of some 2025 water revenue certificates of participation, the bond financing to fund your CIP over the next couple of years, a total of 19 million. What the finance, next slide please, what we're recommending tonight is to begin exploration. So we're not asking you to approve any financing, we're basically asking you to let the financing team go and start working on various options to finance the CIP over the next 2 years. The concept would be to bring the item to a future budget finance committee meeting, and then bring the item back to the full board for an additional discussion. And if the wish at that point is to move forward, we'd actually bring the formal legal documents and possibly an official statement for the financing to the board for approval. So it's a multi-step process here to ultimately get this to the finish line. Next slide. On February 15th, the board approved updated water and wastewater service rates for the district. The plan included a financial model that anticipated the issuance in 23-24 of debt to fund 19 million of capital projects. On June 6, 2024, the board adopted a resolution to engage various professionals to begin the process of analyzing various debt solutions, including myself as municipal advisor, Jones Hall, David Fallman's on with us tonight with the Bond and Disclosure Council, and Oppenheimer and Company as either underwriter or replacement agent, depending on the type of financing we're proposing. There's a lot more detail about the financing team's background. It's actually in the staff report. Next slide. For the district's new 5-year CIP report, there's now 55 million in capital improvements that need to be funded through 2030. The plan, as before, is to fund the most immediate needs with debt. That will provide 19 million in net proceeds for capital projects. The balance of the proposed funding, which is about 27 million of the remainder, includes a mix of pay-as-you-go and FEMA reimbursement. So we're hoping that those FEMA reimbursements come around. I know there was some discussion earlier during the interview process about those FEMA reimbursements. So basically, obviously this was put on pause because of the voter initiative, the fixed charge limitation ordinance back last year. What we did come back to the board with was if that initiative did pass, that the debt capacity to finance the capital improvements dropped from 19 million down to 12 million. Now that that voter initiative failed, we're back up to the original proposed amount of 19 million to fund the CIP. Next slide. The district does have several outstanding obligations: a safe drinking water loan, an SRF loan with the state, a contract, Capital One loan, some revenue bonds that were issued in 2019, and a co-bank loan that was issued in 2021, with relatively decent sized balances on a couple of those. I do want to point out that the 2019 revenue COPs were publicly offered. They did not have an underlying bond rating, but were insured. So they came with a AA rating. Next slide. So the options to be explored, and this was part of the conversation that took place the last time around we went through this. Unfortunately, there were no provisions in your existing legal documents. I think one of the concepts that was discussed last time was to do some interim financing to fund the CIP, with ultimately taking it out maybe with some long-term debt. But unfortunately, there's no provisions in the existing legal documents which allow for a longer amortization of short-term obligations. So if you do a line of credit, or you do a 2 or 3 year note, which is very common for interim financings, there's no way to amortize that. You would break through your debt coverage requirement because the amortization is so short. There are a lot of provisions in well-written covenants that allow you to amortize that over an assumed 20 or 30 year period for purposes of issuing the additional obligation. So you wouldn't break through your rate covenant by issuing the short-term obligation. Unfortunately, your legal covenants are not allowed in this instance. The options that we are going to explore, next slide, would be a direct placement method of sale, of which the district.
I'm sorry, could you stop for a second, please?
Yes.
Could you please describe the nature of those legal covenants and how they are established, and whether there's any capacity within the board to amend them?
No, they're not, because you've made promises to your investors, whether that be a commercial bank who's purchased your direct placement loans or through the publicly offered bonds. Those legal covenants are established generally at the beginning stages of this. The only opportunity you have to change those covenants would be as those covenants disappear, meaning that obligation is paid off, or you create a new covenant. So for example, one thing that we could do here, because if the board wants to consider some short-term financing down the road, doesn't impact us right now, but down the road, would be to write in a springing covenant. Basically, as your other obligations pay off, those covenants or the lack of those covenants would disappear, and we could apply the covenants going forward. That's one of the things that we're intending to do here. But unfortunately, you are restricted to your existing covenants and can't do anything about that. You've made contractual promises to your bondholders and lenders. So two methods of sale that we are going to look at would be a direct placement. Again, the district does have some direct placement obligations outstanding directly with commercial banks. Most of the banks will do a 15-year financing. Some may do 20 as an enterprise fund credit like this. In addition, most lenders would require relatively level debt service, so you can't really do any structuring of the debt service around your existing obligations. Generally, the interest rates on the direct placement loans are higher than the public market, but the cost of issuance are significantly lower because you don't have to go through the process of producing an official statement and go out to a bond rate, which can be relatively expensive. The other one is the public offering method of sale, which does give you the ability to structure some of your debt. We would seek a bond rating through the structuring of the COPs. And it would basically allow some structuring of the debt service. We would look at up to a 30-year bond issue, and there are some differences that occur. We could do a shorter amortization as 5 or 10 years, up to 30 years. With the banks, we're more limited to no more than 15, possibly 20, depending on the banks that want to participate. So there are some differences in that. A public offering is basically selling obligations of the district to retail and institutional investors. So the retail investors could be mom and pops that live here in the community. They could be institutional investors like Franklin Fund and Benham, some of the big funds that invest in municipal bonds. And that's done through a publicly offered process. Anyway, direct placement to commercial banks, public offering. What we want to do is, this market is constantly changing. Obviously, a lot of turmoil going on right now. So what we would like to do is to do an analysis of the various methods of sale and which would benefit the district the most, and then bring that back to budget and finance to have that discussion. So with that, I'll open up to the board for any questions that you might have. We're just asking to get kicked off at this point.
Okay, I'm aware from what Scott's that there's another presentation yet.
Yes.
Okay, my questions are more, that I have at least, are more general. And I'd like to see the other presentation.
Sure.
I'd like board members to note any questions that they may have to not only your portion of the presentation, but is there a second one, and then, or is there more than?
So this first presentation was the one we'd always planned to give tonight, basically asking the board permission to start moving forward on looking at these options and bring them back.
Right.
The second presentation is in response to a couple of board questions related to some more specifics on the financials. So we put together a brief presentation just to show some of the preliminary results that we come across.
Okay. Well, then I'm confused.
Okay.
The second presentation, is there a reason to do that tonight?
It was questions from a board member that was presented to Ms. Torres, and so we would try to respond to that, be ready to discuss it, but it does not have to be discussed.
Okay, all right. Then the general questions that we have at this point from board members to this. I don't know what's in the second presentation.
You will be given the opportunity to review basically it's projected cash flows and debt service coverage based on a couple of different generic options at this point, because we haven't dug into the details without getting permission to move forward. They were just more of a general presentation, that's all.
Okay, then given what you're saying, yes, let's go through that. One of the board members was asked, let's go through that presentation also, because I think it will answer some questions that are likely to come up already from a board member. So let's see this, and then we can transition to questions from board members.
Okay. So in response to a couple of questions that Ms. Torres fielded, we basically wanted to take a look at just some very generic financing options right now, looking at, can the district withstand a 20-year amortization based upon your approved rate increases, with the last one being like 7% increase in 2028, and then holding no further rate increases. Can you withstand a 20-year amortization? And what does that do to not only debt service coverage, but your reserve balance? Okay. And then the second one is to look at a 30-year option, so the board can understand sort of the compressed amortization of 20 years versus the 30 years. Obviously, on a 30-year financing, you pay a lot more interest, but it takes a lot of pressure off of some of the upfront metrics, like debt service coverage and reserves. So if we just go to the first slide there. So the first term, I know it's a little bit small. This is assuming a $19.5 million issue to fund $19 million in project funds. And again, this is just assuming a straight 5% interest rate. It's probably a little above market right now. You're probably in that 4.5% to 4.7% range. And again, this is assuming a publicly offered bond. This is not a direct placement. We're going to go into a lot more of those details. But we wanted to point out that the debt service coverage ranges from about 185 in 2026 to a 155 in 2032. And your projected fund balance is to grow from a minimal 16% last year, 43% at the end of this year, up to about 126%. And that's based upon 126% of your annual O&M would be in your cash reserves. That's total cash. How you split it up, I know there was some discussion of reserve policies earlier tonight, whether that's between emergency reserves and operating reserves. Those are discussions to have. But it's 126% of your annual O&M would be sitting there as cash, which can be applied to some projects as you move forward on the rest of your CIP. This does not assume any rate increases beyond the approved 2028. The only reason that revenues grow up slightly is because fund balance is growing, you're earning a little bit more interest in the fund balance, and that's increasing your total revenues, but it doesn't impact your rates. So this stops with rate increases past the approved 7% in 2028. So keep in mind that we're up to a 155 coverage at the end of the projection period and about 126%. Go to the next slide, please. This is what your total debt service would look like based on all the obligations of the district. Ranges from about 3.4 million a year and ultimately declines as obligations get paid off. Next slide. Here's a graphical representation of all of those layered together. So it starts out at just about 3.4 million and declines over time. And again, this is the 30-year scenario that goes out to 2055. That maroon or red, I'm colorblind, so apologize for that. But the proposed CIPs would be 30-year in this scenario. Next slide. Whoop, one back. So then, back. One more. There we go. So where we were at a 155 ending debt service coverage based on the 30-year term, we're looking at about a 141 debt service coverage based on the 20-year shorter amortization, which compresses the amortization. And your reserves still end up at about 110% of the annual O&M. So to me, it looks like, just based on this very preliminary analysis, that you could withstand a 20-year financing, which will cut down significantly your interest cost and not put too much pressure. Again, of financing that generates 19 million proceeds. So same thing, just a 20-year versus 30-year. Very generic, very preliminary. One of the things that, the reason that we can't say that this is a really great pro forma at this point is because you are in negotiations with your labor groups, and those costs could significantly change, which could impact the pro forma. Right, so that's one thing that's kind of hanging out there that we need to get a handle. Next slide. And again, whoop, one back. Again, this is just the same debt service. You can see that debt service was at about 3.4 million. It's higher during the period of time because the debt service is more compressed on the 20-year scenario. And then the last slide is just the graphical representation of that. And again, I don't want the board to think that this is be all end all at this point. We are just looking at sort of generic 30-year versus 20-year term. Does the financial projection look like you can withstand it? Ms. Ippolito was significantly helped us in pulling all of this together from the budget and the projections and the rate study. So we feel very comfortable with the one caveat that your bargaining unit negotiations could have an impact. So that's really what we wanted to do tonight, was just sort of talk generically, and I think it was in response to at least one of the board members' questions.
Okay, all right, okay. So I want to go to questions, but I want to keep in mind that we're not trying to address all of the questions that are going to come up from debt financing, but we're looking to, do we want to direct the acting general manager to initiate the process so that we can come back with more information to the board? So given that, let's start with questions. Alina?
Oh, I guess, I don't really have any questions. I think it's kind of something we need to have to move forward on to be able to fund these projects. So yeah, I don't really have any questions about all that.
All right, Mr. Foltz.
The second presentation was in response to a question I posed. My public finance friends told me not to go below 1.5, but we're not that far below 1.5, so I'm okay with that.
We're not below the 1.5 on the 20-year. On the 20 years. Okay.
Because the 20-year, I mean, that's the reason we went with CoBank the last time, I think, was the lower interest rate, less friction, you know, that's just moves. Right. So I wanted to see how that was going. Yeah. And yes, quite rightly, the labor negotiations may impact that. So very clear. Appreciate you guys coming here in person doing this. So sometime we'll maybe do it remotely. So you don't have to go so far. But yeah, I mean, I think that we should be ready to go. The only thing I would say is we do have a new general manager joining us in 5 days, 4 days, right, next Tuesday.
Yes.
So yes, while this is directing the interim general manager to do this, I really want to make sure though that the new general manager is like if not day one, certainly day two.
I already have a
Fully
full set of-
informed.
Yes,
You got
him
some-
on July 3rd
Yeah.
to brief him on these very matters and bring him up to speed.
We do.
Right, yes. So that's my only, because he's obviously going to be deeply involved in this going forward. The other questions and comments I have around our ability to sustain a capital program, we'll deal with at a later time, because those are not going away.
Right, okay. Mr. Russ.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ken, for the presentation. Just a couple quick questions. It looked like the total debt service for the 30 year was around 3.4 max, 3.4 million plus or minus, and it was only 3.5 and change at a 20 year.
It was 3.7.
Was it 3.7? Oh, okay, I misunderstood that. And I think the debt service ratio dropped to 1.41 or something like that, right? But that only went out 7 years, right? If the minimum debt ratio is 1.25, what happens when you take those two scenarios out? I mean, because you were obviously showing that the debt ratio was dropping, 0.05, 0.07 every single year. Right. And so even putting aside the labor negotiation, what happens, if we are in violation of the debt service ratio, what happens? And did you take that a little farther out just to see
We can
when we
certainly
get
take it out further, but projections when you get out, they're garbage in, garbage out when you get out to
yeah.
a certain point, right? So
Absolutely.
we generally try to take 1 or 2 current years and then push it 5 years beyond that. But we certainly take a look beyond that. That's not a problem.
Rate increase.
So the answer is that right now we're assuming that the last rate increase goes into 2028 and there's no further increases, not even inflationary. Right, so inflationary increase, because we all know that your cost of running the business, and this is a business, chemical costs and everything else are going up at least the rate of inflation, if not faster, right?
Right.
So if the district doesn't ultimately do future 218s and raise at least to the rate of inflation, you're going to fall behind the curve, and that's essentially kind of what's happening.
Yeah. Okay. So you kept it static, not even inflation or anything.
The only reason the revenues went up slightly was because your fund balance grew some and you had some interest earnings. That was the only reason that revenues went up slightly, but it wasn't any rate increase.
Okay. And so this was a bond approach, a public placement, and you had to add about 500,000 to the 19 million to do all the work and get it placed. What would be an estimate of costs going the other route?
It's hard to say. We will present the full budget for all of these items. This was just, like I said, this was a very generic analysis, but rating agency fee would probably be in the neighborhood of 35,000, and disclosure council fee, just as an estimate, maybe 50 or 55,000. So you're probably saving $85,000, $90,000 in cost of issuance by doing a direct placement with a commercial bank. But keep in mind that the interest rate will most likely be higher. And just so you know, a lot of the banks got really crushed when interest rates went up significantly. Again, keep in mind, we're about 150 basis points over where we were last year in terms of total interest rates. So the rate study, I don't know what assumptions were made for debt service and interest rates at that time. It was a much different interest rate environment, right, than we are today.
Yep.
And I don't know what the Fed's going to do. Right now they're on the holding pattern. Wait to see.
They're going to cut in July.
We'll see.
I hope.
But anyway, the bottom line is that we're just trying to make some gross assumptions right now, just to give you a ballpark estimate per Mr. Foltz's request.
No, that's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, all right. Brian?
Thank you. So I am in support of directing staff to investigate this and develop scenarios. I think that as guidance to staff, I would request tight coordination between finance and engineering. As Bob Russ asked pointed questions on this during the finance committee last time, and the underlying issue is that it's not at all clear that we have a pipeline of projects that is ready to spend $19 million anytime soon. And just to carry that forward a little bit, one of the things that I'm a little confused about is that customarily, my experience with borrowing large sums of money was to buy a house. And I'm grateful that I had that opportunity. I could not have done that with a year of my pay, and so spreading it out over 30 years made a lot of sense. Our capital improvement project list, while it sums some $50 million, is made up primarily of projects that are $1 million, $3 million projects. And for the cost of interest payments, we could be executing projects. So I'm a little confused about the premise of borrowing a large sum of money as if we had a $19 million project to build, when what we actually have our whole slew of $500,000, $2.5 million projects. So I think that as the only argument I've heard compelling to borrow huge sums of money all at once is that the finance or the setup costs are then, you have one setup cost for the borrowing all that money, but that's profoundly dwarfed by the interest payments, at least by the charts that I'm seeing. So I would very much appreciate coordination between those two teams within the staff, so that we're looking at scenarios where we're not borrowing any more than we need at any one time, and that perhaps we're even just paying as we go to a certain extent to implement our projects, and really pressing engineering staff to have realistic timelines on when the money's going to be needed.
So I don't hear a question in that, more of a statement. Am I correct in what you said, Brian?
Maybe I'll ask the question. Can staff please do that? Question mark.
Well, then the question is to staff and not our financing team. So we need to leave that with you, Jen, and our incoming general manager.
We'll look at that.
So,
we'll come up with some scenarios.
Okay. And Brian, I think what you're alluding to is a cash flow projection on the engineering projects. And we've heard that before, and we've not been able to get realistic on that. I have hopes that we can, but
right. And I think that should be the dog that wags the tail of financing. Right. The projects should come first.
Agreed. Yeah. So the questions that I have, Heather, we were anticipating 19 million a year and a half ago, January 2024. We've had some changes financially since then. So given that, do our existing rates still support that? And that's what I see in all of the charts. I just want to confirm yes on that.
Based on the preliminary calculations, I believe the rates do support the 19 million. And based on the CIP and the work that was done during preparing the budget, the 19 million will be spent over a 3-year period.
Okay. All right. Why this financing team?
Because of the experience that they bring to the table. I personally have significant experience with this financing team, and they know their stuff. And I have seen other agencies use different financing teams. And for example, covenants are not looked at as a whole. They're only looked at for that arrangement and not looked at for the whole agency's debt and possible future debt. Right. This team looks at the agency's entire portfolio and looks at what's down to come, not just what they need right now, so that they're not pigeonholing them. Is that the right word? And holding them back from being able to get the money they need for future projects. This is a very talented team.
Okay. And lastly, a comment. If we have future presentations on this, like to see it as part of the board agenda packet, if at all possible, so that all board members have a chance and the public to review that before the meeting.
We'll include the presentations with the minute.
Right. No, with the agenda packet.
No, I understand, but I'm talking about this meeting.
Right.
In the
Yeah,
future
this
meetings, we will
one
do.
for future.
Yeah.
Okay.
Excuse me, could we also post those on the website for this?
Okay. Okay. So given that, before we make a motion, I want to hear any comments from the general public on this. So we'll transition to that.
I'm Bruce Holloway from Boulder Creek. The 2019 COPs, I kind of have the way I remember it, I may be wrong about this, but I thought that the 2019 COPs were associated with a specific list of projects. And so my question is this the same thing? Because one of the problems with that is if there's any snag in any of those projects, then that means that might be several $1 million hold up there that can't be spent. So that's one of my questions. Now, is this tied to a specific list of projects so that if there's a snag in any of those projects, then there's a problem? Or is it possible to switch projects around? Because that's what the district would usually do. If there's a snag in one project, focus on others. Another question I have is, we already have a bond council. Cameron Weiss calculated the penalty, the tax penalty on those 2019 COPs, which was due as a Form 8038 filed on the 5th anniversary last summer. The 5th anniversary of the 2021 loan is next March, which is less than 12 months from now. I suspect that there's going to be another penalty. And I think that's a current liability that should be already on the books. We should already have an estimate of it. We should know what we're in for. So we already have a bond counsel. We paid him as recently as February. Why do we need another bond counsel? Is it just that bond counsels are a dime a dozen? It doesn't really matter who to pick. I think the district should find a good bond counsel and stick with them. So I don't understand why we're being pushed to use a different bond counsel than we've been using for the last 2 years. Now, I think what I would like to hear from a counsel, if they're working for me, I would like to hear the downside. I'd like to hear the warning about the tax penalty, for example, which I haven't heard from Jones Hall, that you might have a tax penalty. I just heard Ms. Aguilito say that she expects it's going to take 3 years to spend 19 million. Well, the way things work around here, and I've been watching for a long time, if you plan on doing something in 3 years, you're going to be lucky if it happens in 5. It might even take 7. Sometimes things take 14, 12, 14 years, like the Belton Heights tank or the Belton fish ladder. So if you're aiming for 3, I think I see the overshoot coming. And I think the bond counsel should say, if you go over 3 years, you are going to pay a tax penalty. Watch out. But that's not what we're getting. I feel like this bond counsel is working for the deal. They're not going to make any money unless there's a deal. And they want the biggest possible deal. All of these people are working for the biggest deal. So the last thing I want to say is that there's a 5% cost estimation, a 5% escalator that's in the next item. The next item, Mark, your memo says that you're projecting, when you're making cost estimates, you're assuming that there's going to be inflation of 5% a year. So, for example, if the district borrows 19 million and on the first anniversary, there's 8 million left, that 8 million will have depreciated in 12 months by 5%. You're going to lose $400,000 in actual value. So my question is, why borrow the whole thing all at once? Why not? I think you should have probably borrowed the 12 million last summer and then followed it up with 8 million. The reason that the board chose not to do that is because they thought the cost of the placement would be greater. But there's 4 different ways you can lose on these deals. And I don't have time to tell you all 4, but the one you should be focused on is the how much the money is going to depreciate. Whatever is left, the first anniversary, that will have shrunk by 5%. Why do it now? Why set that up for yourselves?
I do want to respond to a couple of the points that Mr. Holloway was bringing up. No, the district does not have a committed list, tying us to these specific projects. We have I think we referred to it as the wish list in the engineering committee meeting of here's what we plan to have done. But we've had emergencies come up over the years that we've needed to redirect funds to at times. And as Mr. Holloway correctly points out, we haven't been able to get all of the projects done all of the time. The second point was on the bond council. Heather, I would like to have you address that question that Mr. Holloway was asking, because I am curious on that.
Cameron Wiest does prepare our arbitrage report. Cameron, the size of Cameron Wiest's firm is not appropriate for a bond, or excuse me, a debt financing such as this. Jones Hall specializes in debt financing. I would like to add one clarification to the comment that you just said. May I?
Sure.
There were resolutions adopted by the board for the 21 COPs as well as the $15 million loan that restricted the district for spending those bond proceeds on certain projects. And I agree with the public members' comments that it has restricted us and slowed us down in spending the district down in spending those funds. It is my recommendation that the district does not adopt such a resolution in the future. That would be my recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Bob?
Yeah, just a little background history on why that was done, because that was done in 2019 as well. The district has a history, and because a lot of people here haven't lived in the area for a while, as long as other people were on the board at the time, the district's history was to do a lot of shuffling around of projects. Commitments would be made to a group, and then those commitments would be just willy-nilly withdrawn. And we certainly are seeing some of the fallout in that with the Felton Heights tank, for example, that should have been handled a long time ago. So the way that the board and the new board at the time wanted to deal with that was to basically communicate to our district, this is what we're doing, and we're not going to change it short of a board resolution. Now, there might be a middle ground to go here, but given that the budget that was passed, it's not a wish list. We passed a capital budget. We passed an unfunded capital budget. We talked about this at that time.
We did pass a budget.
That is absolutely, from my point of view right now, pure fantasy. Has nothing to do with reality. There's no priorities set up in any of this. There was very little coordination done with the engineering committee on this. This is getting us back. If we don't have some say of this is the projects we're going to do, and we're going to change that only under duress, then we get back into the bad old days of things getting shuffled around, community members' expectations not being met, and it getting back to, the good old boys network again.
So you allude to some middle ground.
Maybe.
Right. Maybe. Right. So
because short of having something that's middle ground, we need to have a commitment.
Right. And I want to focus on, though, what we have in front of us tonight.
The next question that I have, or comment I have, based on Mr. Holloway's statement, is there a way that we can structure this to take down tranches?
Yes.
Because Mr. Holloway's quite right.
Mm-hmm.
We think something's going to happen. And by the way, the reason that we went with the list in 2019 and 2021 is the commitments that were made to us on the part of our general manager at the time. Yeah, these no problem, Smite.
Right. Right.
Well, turns out it was a problem.
So I'd like the financing, my recommendation is for the financing team to keep that taking out tranches as needed over the period.
If possible.
Yes. So keep that as a consideration.
If he's gonna tell us, it probably isn't possible.
I'm not gonna say it's not possible, but there's not many products out there because you could do something that's called a drawdown bond.
Right.
But that's generally a short-term financing. And so we can't do short-term financings because of our covenant. So we're somewhat restricted by what previous folks set up for the district many years ago. So we're having to live with those consequences now. But we could certainly structure, do a financing 1 year and come back a year later and do the financing for the next round of I mean, it's not as efficient, I don't think, than doing over, like, say, a 2 or 3 year window because of the extra financing costs, but it is possible to do that and keep those costs as low as we can, but you can do additional bond tranches as you identify projects dependent on. I think the key component is identifying the priority projects and making those a priority and actually funding them. And we need to know as a financing team, because if the district does borrow money and a project dies for whatever reason, always projects die, things happen, COVID happened, for example, and delayed a lot of projects, right? But you can legally spend those money on other water-related projects of the district. So if you hamstring yourself by creating a resolution that restricts it, then you really can't spend that money and you sit on it for a period of time. What you want to do is spend the money in a reasonable time frame, and you have a 3-year window. That makes sense?
It makes sense from a pure finance point of view. It makes no sense from a community relations point of view.
Something to be discussed at another meeting once they bring options back to us. Oh, okay. All right, Brian?
Right, I'll just chime in that in my experience, the public works projects that we're trying to advance, if we were to develop the Gantt chart for those projects, that the error bars on construction date is plus or minus 2 years. If often, and so it's a very challenging whatever game of cornhole to get it in the hole at the right moment. And so I can't emphasize enough how important coordination between engineering and finance is to make this thing make sense.
Okay.
Sorry, I have a question for Ken.
Sure.
Once you are authorized to go, whether it be a smaller amount or 19, what's the range in time to actually get it done?
Well, what we're committing to here is a series of meetings, right? So we're talking about coming back to the budget and finance and then back to the board at least once, maybe twice, right? To discuss the items at the full board level, then coming back for formal approval if you guys wish to go forward at that point. That could take a while. The normal process to do a publicly offered bond is about 4 months. Direct placement can cut down to 2.5 or 3 months. It's a little bit faster to go out with a term sheet and get bids from the various banks that participate. So that's your time frame. The question is, when do we kick that off, right? And that's what we're looking for direction from the board. At this point, we're just trying to come up with options, discuss it at budget finance, bring it back to the board, and then if you guys still want to go forward and we kind of hammered out some of this stuff, then 3 to 4 months later we could have money in the bank. But we need to know when that starting point.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Then I will make the motion to direct the acting general manager to initiate the process of debt financing.
What do we have? Oh, we did have public comment.
Okay.
We went back again. I'll second.
Okay.
So vote to bring back to the manager, President Smalley,
Yes.
Vice President Lane,
Yes.
Director Foltz,
Yes.
and Director Larday.
Yes.
Motion passed.
And one more.
I'm sorry, I forgot. And Barbara.
Yes.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
All right. All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you to the financing team for coming here this evening, and with 2 of you just sitting in the audience. So thanks.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Okay, I'd now like to move on to the next item on our agenda, and it's the Brackenbury and Four Springs consolidation update. And I'm presenting that one. In October of last year, the board requested that I take the lead on assessing status on consolidations. Since that time, I added Bob and formed an ad hoc committee back in January with the goal of trying to, my primary, I thought, was what is the condition that we have out there for these consolidating these two water systems into our district? What's the likely costs that we see on that? And what are the sources of funding that we might be able to obtain out there? Included in the memo are cost estimates that the ad hoc committee put together, along with a report from Moonshot Missions, a nonprofit agency that assists water agencies, underdeveloped areas in providing water to them. They're familiar with the area, having done work with Big Basin and with having done some work with Forest Springs over the last, I believe, year, 2 years. Given the costs that that are included in the memo, I don't see being able to move forward at this time because we have not been able to identify grants out there from agencies. So in addition to talking to Moonshot Missions, a nonprofit agency, I did reach out to two entities of the state, which included the Department of Water Resources that we got the existing grant from. The Department of Water Resources said, we are out of money for any additional significant grant funding, and they don't anticipate getting any additional funding from the state as part of a subsequent bond that's been passed by the state. They see all of the money going to a different part of the state's water support aspects, all going to disadvantaged communities. And in all of the previous discussions, we don't qualify for that. These two other water systems don't qualify for that. So with that, I invite Bob Foltz to comment also as the other ad hoc committee member. But
You said two, you talked to two.
I talked to two different portions of the state.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So, Bob?
Yeah, I mean, this is heartbreaking on a whole number of levels in terms of being confronted with this situation. We're in California where the costs are just absolutely through the roof when compared to just about anywhere else in the United States. And we're in a situation where, it's the classic squeeze in the middle. We're not Atherton, can spend all sorts of money, and we're not disadvantaged. So you have no financial support really internally other than what people can generate themselves. And within the cost structure that we're looking at here to do phase 2 and phase 3, it's just heartbreaking. There is some money available through that Brackenbury has through FEMA that we're still working on in terms of being able to try to get a consolidation effort with Brackenbury. I will say, this is something I'm just going to throw out there because I don't like to give bad news without at least something. It is possible that a small number of people in Forest Springs that are at lower elevations could be served from the Lion Zone. It wouldn't be very many, and it would also require a expenditure of funds, none of which has been investigated at this point. This is all pure at this point, just looking at elevations and that sort of thing. And I would say as part of our activity on the ad hoc committee level, I'd like us to take that on and see what the costs would be using the cost estimate that we just got back from Anderson Pacific on the Brackenbury lines. Other than that, there don't appear to be any financial solutions here that are affordable. I think this also kind of points out, for me anyway, the larger issue of whether or not a capital improvement program that is highly dependent on grants, how prudent that is in today's world. That's obviously a larger discussion for a different time, but I think this sends up a warning flare about grants and their availability, at least for the next 3 or so years. And with that context, not sure where we go from.
Okay. I do want to follow up further on what Bob has said. When the district started into this potential consolidations, we significantly overpromised and are under-delivering on what we were overpromising. With the initial thoughts from our general manager at the time that we could do all of the main lines, a pump station out there, and tap into both of these for the grant, for the $3.2 million grant that we had. We can't come anywhere close to that based on the cost estimates that are included in here with the problem. Second, although Bob, I appreciate your wanting to try to give some potential, I have the fear that we're setting ourselves up for a similar.
I'm not promising anything.
I understand that.
It's an investigation.
I wanted the opportunity to have further discussions internally before we came. I don't know that this is the last of what we discuss here, but since you've already said it, that.
Well, I think what we are doing here, and I want the community to know that we are trying everything in our power to try to do as much as possible for as many people as possible.
Right.
It does not mean that there's any money available for that program either, but at least I think it's worthwhile investigating at least a spreadsheet level to figure out what's there.
Right.
I think the other thing that this showed for me anyway, is that the district's approach to consolidation is very ad hoc. And I saw this sort of with Felton, with Lompico, to a lesser extent with Olympia, which was actually reasonable. Felton Heights, we do not do a good job at establishing what a consolidation process is. And as a result of that, I've at least taken the initiative to do an initial draft of what a consolidation process may look like. Obviously, it is not something that is going to happen immediately. It may not happen at all. The new general manager may have some ideas about this as well. But I think a process of being able to establish what do we need from people, what do they need from us in a clear manner, documented, written, so that people can look at it and say, this is what we have to do in order to do a consolidation, has some value. And I would hope that that's something that the board could take on.
And I agree with Bob, having the need for that, because the district in the last several months has been contacted by another small water system on the very southern side of the district, specifically River Grove.
Behind us.
But again, I don't have anything that, like Bob is alluding to be able to give them in writing, other than my description verbally of all of the hurdles that I've seen in the last 3.5 years in trying to go through this process here and where we are now with it. So having something that the district could provide out there to these other small water systems, because Brackenbury and Forest Springs are not the last two that the district is going to be asked for in the next 5 years even. So there are going to be other small water systems that are going to be asking. So we should have some more formal of a process. But again, we need to involve our incoming general manager with that. And I believe that he has done at least a consolidation of where he is still currently with his existing water district. So with that, I'd like to field questions from board members first about this. Again, there's no recommended motion on this tonight. This is simply a status update, which I had committed to do early this year. And now that I've talked enough, questions, Alina?
Yeah, well, I was kind of surprised to see this on the agenda when we don't have our new general manager in here, because I really feel that this is more of a role for him rather than board members. So
Yes.
I guess if it's more like a status update, but I kind of wish he was here hearing all of this and getting this update as well, so he can kind of hit the ground running. But what I see that you talked, to DWR and these in Moonshot, but have we talked to Supervisor Martinez? Have we talked to the county? I mean, Sierra Ryan, like
I not
They have
for
no
these,
money.
not for these two, but I have talked to them in the past, specifically to try to do something on Big Basin years ago. And every question that I asked related to financing was, sorry, we don't have any, we can't support
They
it.
don't have any money.
well,
They don't have any
that's
money.
not what I'm hearing. What I heard from the county was that they wanted to
Okay.
come and talk to us, but we were not prepared in any sort of a way because we didn't have a general manager.
Mhm.
So maybe that's worth going back and talking with the county again, because I think they had, a kind of an idea of a more of a regional consolidation plan, which we saw that they're talking about that, of bringing in Big Basin to try to get us more money as a big lump. And so sitting and talking to them and having those conversations.
I'm not opposed to another conversation, but has the county approached?
No.
They've not approached me, but let me finish, Paul. But as to why we're doing this now rather than after our new, I don't expect for the next several months our new general manager to have the details of what has been put together here. You agreed back in October, yes, Mark, go take the lead on this for now. So that's what I've done.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's just, this is a big conversation that I kind of wish that he was there
We
and.
will have it again.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, well.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, okay,
And I
and
intend to brief him on everything that's here, but certainly not on his second or third day here. He needs some time to absorb everything else that's going on.
yeah,
So,
no, I hear that. But it's like, I just feel like this is a bigger conversation with our leaders that are here in the valley, instead of just, going back and forth and bring, I just thought there's gonna be more outreach to working with more partners to kind of like deal with this and try to find some more solutions to this. And, yeah, anyways, so, what does that mean for the grants? If we're saying hold, don't we have some grants that are still, are those spent down?
we have one confirmed grant from DWR for the 3.2 million, and we are actively expending that right
Okay,
now.
and the FEMA money?
The FEMA money is not ours. The FEMA money
belongs to Brackenbury.
So then would they
Brackenbury.
lose that if we don't move forward?
Bob is working with Nicole to resolve that and to resolve whether we can utilize our existing contractor for a portion of the Brackenbury infrastructure, because what they have in terms of a grant doesn't cover the full bid that we got from the contractor for all of Brackenbury's. So there's still work that, at least right now, Bob and Nicole have been having discussions on. So I'm not ready to say, we are not ready to say, nope, doesn't happen. It's still possible. That's for a future update, future meeting on that portion of the grant. So there's no other grant.
There's the EPA.
That's true. There is the EPA that we have a pre-award for that Chris has been working on, but I do have to point out, getting the grant for a water tank up there without all of the rest of the infrastructure to support it is like getting the two wheels in a muffler for your car.
And that money will only cover probably about half the cost of the tank. Maybe.
The cost that I think I said for the water tanks themselves was 4.9. So maybe it covers a quarter of it. And please go look at the detailed cost estimates that are in here as to, and if anybody is questioning, well, why is this so much? It shocked me when I'm putting them together also, but those are the realities that I'm dealing with. This is the kind of the cost estimating, at least it's what I did professionally while I was still working. So this is what it takes. So any further question, Aline?
No, I just think we shouldn't be just going this alone, and we should have been working with the county the whole time closely.
Okay. Question, Bob?
Well, I want to respond to that because, that makes it seem like we're being incompetent or not responsive. The county has been involved with the Big Basin, which is the bigger issue for years now.
Right.
And I know they've offered some money, but is there money to actually be able to do Big Basin? No, they have no money. The state has no money.
Right.
If you can find money out of one of the bonds or what have you, or maybe there's something floating around, then please bring it to our attention. But that's what Moonshot Missions does. That's what Moonshot Missions does.
Right.
They are the experts in this area.
But
what this does for me is that it really drives home the fact that relying on grants, which is really the kindness of strangers, is not a way to organize your capital improvement program for anybody, regardless of whether it's us or areas that have been severely impacted by a fire, because we're small. They're in Sacramento. We're not on the high priority radar anymore.
And to further that, Helena, no, I have not had conversations with current county supervisor, but I did have significant discussions with the county involvement while the district was evaluating whether we could do something with Big Basin. And Rick and I spent a year and a half. I made at least 2 proposals to the county seeking some small amounts of money from them to try to help do some initial engineering. And sorry, we don't have money. So I was frustrated by so even though they want us to do something like this, they never came forward with anything. So, but I'm not opposed to having the conversation, but I didn't go down that path. This is what I did. So, questions from other board members? Mr. Russ.
Remind me what the all-in cost would be for consolidation with Forest.
I was
just, a range.
I was looking just for the construction aspects on the order of 25 million to do all of main water lines, 2 water tanks, pumping station, And then the internal aspects of Forest Springs, although they're laterals going out to different areas. Because I was still uncertain when I completed this as to what Brackenbray's status was going to be. I didn't include the other portion of what's in this or not. I was simply looking at phase 2 and phase 3. Their portion could be another between $1 million and $2.5 million.
I mean, basically, it's about 175,000 per household. I mean, it's just staggering.
Yeah. So, wow.
There's only 150 households there.
Yes,
between
yes.
Four Springs and Brackenbray.
Yeah.
I'm just doing a rough number, right?
Right,
Not an
right.
exact calculation, but it's around that order of magnitude.
I can bring you up to speed on this further since 20 minutes ago was the first you've seen this or heard of this. Brian Largay, any questions on this?
I think that this is very important information, and I am grateful for all the work, all the collaboration that went in to develop it. Grateful for the work of our team, Bob and Mark, for engaging, and grateful for the work of Moonshot Missions and the collaboration by the folks at Brackenbray and Forest Springs. I think that the outcome of the analysis is breathtaking and heartbreaking and troubling. I think that unfortunately, what this reflects is the extraordinary challenge of water infrastructure in a topographic landscape that is extremely rugged, homes that are dispersed, and a geologic context that's just so riddled with landslides that the construction of everything is profoundly expensive. I don't have a solution. I think we should continue to work on it. By analogy, 20 years ago, the people of Felton decided to buy their water district. That cost $14 million 20 years ago. And we all put hundreds of dollars onto our property tax bill that we're still paying every year to try to cover those costs. The per unit cost was lower, but with inflation and all the rest of it, maybe there's some coverability there. I don't know the alternative. Private wells perhaps start to get cost competitive at that level. I don't know if that's achievable, but that's how more distantly located homes provision water for themselves. So I think that it's important to have these facts in front of us. It's important to continue to look at them, and I'm grateful to have the information organized in this way.
Okay. Then I'd like to open it up to public comment on this. So.
I'll go first. Okay. Hey, I'm Karen Vitale from Forest Springs, and I'm speaking on behalf of our board and our residents. First, I'd like to thank President Smalley and Bob Foltz and the rest of the board for the work for continuing to collaborate with us and work together with us as we try to make this consolidation happen. Obviously, it's staggering to see this outcome when in 2021 we thought it was going to take $4 million to get this over the finish line. So it's pretty rough. We appreciate the time and the effort to prepare the status and cost update report. And although the conclusions are disappointing and rather staggering, we know
that we're better served by having real numbers to work with. And for really understanding the financial hurdle that we have to overcome to move forward. Hollow promises with no money behind them don't get us a water system. We get that, and I'd rather have this real and honest discussion. Or let me say informed discussion. Given the conclusions of the report, though, I think Forest Springs would like to make some points about what we've heard. First of all, we're not passively standing by, waiting for the funding issue to resolve itself in Forest Springs. And it's our intent to continue monitoring the grant situation and working with Moonshot in an ongoing effort to find some money. If one thing we do know from the last 4 years is the grant landscape changes constantly. And that $1 billion that is coming into the state's coffers due to Prop 4 will be distributed in some way or another. And it's our belief that part of taking our non-passive role, our very active role, is to be lobbying with our elected officials to make things happen. And so we're not going to get that kind of attention unless we do that. I think the other part is that we've been far too accepting of the status as a non-disadvantaged community and getting squeezed in the middle. Now, those are based on census data of large census tracts, and both Bracken Bray and Forest Springs are small neighborhoods within those census tracts. And there are studies that can be done to determine whether that are accepted by these granting agencies to determine if we truly fit within the median household income that was determined for our census tract. So those are the kinds of efforts we want to make and that the board is making to better qualify ourselves. I'm going to just list off things, and I'm going to ask for about 30 seconds longer if I can do that.
Please continue. Yes.
We don't know what the criteria are going to be for that $1 billion, so I don't think we can close the book on this until we do. Okay, so those criteria we know from the drinking water people will be coming out later in the fall, and I think we continue to try to have a voice. We recognize the district is short-staffed and we cannot pursue all of your priorities. And so what we would like to do is to continue to make the commitment to continue to monitor the situation and inform the board every 6 to 12 months of what we're seeing. Let's not throw consolidation into a coffin, nail it shut and bury it in the ground, but let's keep this as an ongoing dialogue should the landscape change and something else become possible. And I think that's an important thing we want to come out of this, that we're not going to do that. And finally, we'd like to see that as a result of that, we'd like to see the letter of intent remain intact until we know more. Finally, I think it's unrealistic to expect that anybody can value engineer $23 million down to something affordable. So we're not going there. But I would like to see if we can, look at some different options and opportunities. One thing we really like to see is what is the requirement that's driving this huge engineering project at the very beginning? Because I came into it after it had been decided that this big project was necessary for consolidation. And this speaks to the checklist. What do you tell a community that wants to consolidate? They have to have. It's been a learning experience, I know, for us in Forest Springs over the last 4 years to understand that who we were when we came to the table was not going to get us over the finish line. And we are continuing to make investments in our infrastructure to keep ourselves alive, because that's what gets forgotten in these discussions, is that we are still using water up there and we still need a water system. And we can't consolidate with you, but we have to find a way to deliver water to the homes in Forest Springs every day. And that's what we're continuing to work on. Those improvements, perhaps those improvements in turn will qualify us to consolidate under a different set of circumstances that we find our way through. So that's the other part we'd like to understand better.
Okay, I would like to respond briefly then to further conversations. Yes, I'm open to that. I've been the one that's been in direct contact with you over the last 8 months or so.
Yes.
Please Bring it to me when I can see that we could present that to the board. Yes. So yes, on that, as to keeping the letter of intent open, there's nothing in this status update tonight that I was looking to change. I'm not recommending to close out anything at this point, including this ad hoc committee functioning that we've been doing. Bob has already alluded to some further work that we may be doing. Alina is requesting some conversation with the county. So yes, but I don't see that the district can fund or do any of that. So we can continue to have further conversations. So yes.
Can I give you a quick update on my conversation with the county as well? 5 seconds.
Can we do that?
Offline? Sure.
Yes, can we do that offline?
Yeah.
Because
I kind
the
of
board,
like to
the
hear
board,
if it's 5
the board
seconds.
needs to go back into a closed session, and we've already been here for 3.5 hours. I'll bring back whatever it is to
No, then the rest of the board can't hear it. Cause you're an ad hoc.
1 minute. Go.
I'm gonna take 1 minute.
Okay.
So I have had numerous conversations with the county on consolidation,
Mhm.
on funding available for consolidation, on technical assistance for consolidation.
Right.
It's always a zero. The only money we have is $0. The only staff time we have is 0 staff time. Recently, I attended a meeting, a conference call they had about 2 or 3 months ago that Mark pointed me at when he was not available to attend. And I was the educator in the room with the county, explaining all of the aspects of consolidation, the water rules, a lot of different things. So it was disappointing that that is where they are. They are at the very beginning nascent elements of their process. And it's going to be a long time until they're ready with a plan that's comprehensive, and God knows where they're gonna get the money. And so they thought that our consolidation would cost $14,000.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Karen. And I'm glad I let you pretty much reiterate what I've been expressing on that. Mr. Holloway?
I think I saw something in the packet about a CFD, Community Facilities District. That's the way Felton got going when they wanted to buy out Cal-Am. So in the Felton case, there was no homeowners association, no water association, there was nothing. It was just a bunch of customers. So there was nobody on the other side. So they needed to create a district. They created the Community Facilities District, and that's how they were able to establish a tax, and then they were able to raise the money. And so when they had an election, Measure W and all that. So a Community Facilities District was appropriate in the Felton case. But in the case of Brackenbury and Forest Springs, they're already part of the district. So all you need is an assessment district within this district. And that's the way that's the way Felton Heights came in, that's the way Olympia came in, that's the way Olympia came in. So CFD, I think if you start talking to people at the county, they're gonna say, oh, CFDs are us. We know all about CFDs and how to do them. Right. Well, they tried it with Wampico and the first one failed, the election failed. I don't think a CFD is the way to go. I don't think you need it, but and in the end, to do the consolidation, you need an assessment district within this district. So I just kind of think CFDs is scratching off your list.
All right, thank you. Any further from the public?
I'm Nicole Lonneberg from Brackenbury. I don't really have much to offer here, except that the policy would have hopefully, if it had been in place, would have distinguished Brackenbury and Forest Springs with having money in hand that we are now probably at risk of losing, because it's really been 2 years of a stalemate with the district. It's highly disappointing. And as you look forward, whether it be COVID disaster or a federal administration change that's so drastic and detrimental, that, with Brackenbury having the money, that money had greater value 4 years ago than it does today. And then I keep on hearing that there are more costs that are expected of Brackenbury in this process, and it's really disappointing. And it's hard to explain to my community how things are coming back. And so I look forward to the meeting that Bob and I are going to have to better understand the estimate that came in from Anderson Pacific. But being removed from this process from where we were when we had monthly meetings is really disheartening because it's really slowed us down. And so this is our lives. This water is life. Water is value into property. And we were at risk, Brackenbury, after doing so much hard work to secure money and to do a lot of the stuff on our own, that this continually dragging out is costing us the ability to fully recover. And the expectations of the district are different than what were communicated back in 2021. And the expectation of the district to have 100% a rebuilt system when there are usable infrastructure makes it really prices out a community like Brackenbury with only 24 households. So I look forward to having some immediate discussions over the next 30 days, because we would have to go to our community to vote on different things. I do appreciate both of your time in it, but it's, August will be 5 years.
Okay, thank you.
By the way, I follow up on that. We do have a meeting set for Monday at 10. And we'll be going through all that in detail. I expect we'll be able to reach a conclusion fairly quickly. There will be a policy decision on the part of the board, and there's also some information that we'd like to get from Brackenbury on the current system, and that'll all come together.
Okay, yeah, good. I'm glad there's somebody else working on this with me, Bob. Okay, seeing no further comments from members of the public online nor here, we will close discussion on that item and then move on to the consent agenda. Does anybody wish to pull something from the consent agenda? If not, I consider that approved. We have nothing on written communication or district reports. So with that, I would like to conclude this open session, this portion of the open session, but to let the general public know, the board needs to transition back into closed session for what's our guess? 20 minutes? What's our guess?
30.
Maybe 30.
Okay. All right. Okay. So, all right. Thanks, folks. Thanks for attending.
Okay, CTV, we'll be back in a half an hour. Thank you.
Did that get reported out? I think so. Okay. All right. I do want to report out that the board took an action. We have agreed to appoint our newest board member, Bob Russ, to the ad hoc committee for the labor negotiations, joining Alina Lang. Bob will be replacing Jeff Hill on that ad hoc committee. With that, I want to conclude the meeting. Thank you.
Adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.